Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make some Pro Chemical and Dye color swatches. I'm going to do both ice-dyed swatches and liquid-dyed swatches. So not too long ago, Pro Chemical and Dye came out with 10 new dye colors. And so I purchased all of those, and then they had some other dye colors which were clearance colors and then a couple of dye colors that I don't have. So all total, I'm going to do 15 dye colors. I'm going to start out doing the ice-dyed colors. And I've taken one of my long plastic totes. It's the kind of plastic tote like you would put a lid on and stick underneath your bed. I have a metal rack down in the bottom. And then I am going to take some of my silicone cake molds and make a little ice barrier to stick a color swatch down in. If you've ever watched any of my other videos and I say that I put the shirts to process down inside of long totes that have metal racks in the bottom, it's these totes that I'm talking about. They're perfect because you can lay a shirt down in the bottom of this tote on that rack, place the lid on top, the shirt's not going to dry out, and it's also not going to sit down in the runoff from where any excess dye has gone through the shirt. So these are a perfect setup for processing shirts, for ice dyeing shirts, liquid dyeing shirts, and in this case, making color swatches. As I'm prepping my setup, I have my color swatches down inside of my soda ash solution and I have them soaking. I just take regular plain, like 100% cotton fabric. Most of the time I purchase quilting fabric. I pre-wash it, dry it, and then I cut it into squares. These squares are about 4 inches. Normally I like to have them a little bit bigger, but I ended up cutting these about 4 inches square. Then I take a Sharpie and I write the color name up in the right-hand corner of the piece of fabric. And since I'm doing Pro Chemical and Dye color swatches, beside the color name I'll put a PC so that I know which dye company it is. Lots of dye companies have colors with the same names. So I try to put the dye company out beside the name of the dye because not all colors that have the same name from dye companies look the same. Then, so that I can tell which color or where to put each one of the color swatches, I am laying out my colors beside the little ice barriers that I've made for the swatches. I'm also kind of trying to group the colors a little bit together with maybe the blues together, the pinks together, and so on. That's not necessary though, that's just something I like to do when I'm making color swatches. Now that I have my setup finished, I'm going to go to my soda ash bucket, get out the color swatches, and wring them out by hand. Then I'm going to take each color swatch, crumple it slightly, and place it in the proper silicone cake mold beside the dye with the same name. When I place the color swatches down inside of the cake molds, I want to make sure that they don't go too far down in where they're going through the rack and touching the bottom of the container. I don't want any of them dyed in the muck. I want them to be rack dyed. If you're wondering what muck is, it's the runoff from the melting ice that's mixed with the dye. And the reason why I don't want them muck dyed is because I want to see the colors as bright as they're going to be. Meaning I want to see if the color is going to be a light color, if it's going to be a darker color, and so on. When you muck dye it, they always end up a little bit darker than they would if they were rack dyed. Now I'm adding about 3 very small ice cubes on top of each of the color swatches. I get these ice cubes from my ice maker inside the house, and I'm using these cubes because they're all a uniform size. I try to do just about the same process on every single one of these swatches to have some consistency in my dye swatches. Okay, so now I'm going to start applying the dye over the top of the ice. And I'm choosing to apply the dye over the top of the ice versus adding the dye under the ice because I think it gives me more color splits. And the purpose for doing the ice-dyed swatches is to see how each of the dye colors split. So I'm going to do a light sprinkle of dye over the top of the ice. And then once I have the dye on all of these swatches, I'm going to come back and add a little bit of additional dry soda ash to the top. Now I'm going to place this container aside and allow the ice to melt. And after all the ice melts, I'm going to go ahead and place the lid on top of this tote so that the dye swatches don't dry out while they're processing. Because this is such a small piece of fabric, they can dry out really easily, and when the fabric dries out, the dye quits reacting with the fabric. So your dye swatches won't be near as dark and pretty as the color really is. So you don't get a good representation of the dye color. Then I left these dye swatches alone for about 36 hours after all the ice melted before I began rinsing them. Okay, so let's make our liquid swatches. I prepped the swatches the same exact way that I did the ice-dyed ones, but this time I'm going to place them inside of small snack-sized baggies. I'm going to open up the swatch so that I can see the color name through the baggie. I already have my dye mixed, and according to Pro Chemical and Dye's formula for mixing liquid dyes, if I want a medium color, I add 2 teaspoons of dye and 1 cup of water. So that is the way I'm mixing all of these dyes, except I'm actually going to scale it down. I don't want a full cup of dye, so I'm only going to mix up a 1/4 cup of dye. So I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon of dye and a 1/4 cup of water. Also, since it's winter and I'm not going to allow these to go outside or anything like that, I'm going to skip using urea. Urea is a humectant, so it tries to keep the moisture in the garment that you're using liquid dye on. I'm really not going to need that this time because it's not hot. I'm not going to allow my fabric to dry out, so I'm going to skip using the urea when I mix up my dyes. I'm going to pour enough of the liquid dye into the baggie to fully saturate the dye swatch. Then I'm going to seal up the baggie really well and kind of move it around, squish it around to make sure that dye is fully saturated throughout that little dye swatch. Then I'm going to place the baggie aside, and I'm going to allow all of these to process for 36 hours as well. They probably processed a little bit longer than that because I waited until I rinsed out the ice dye ones before I rinsed out the liquid dyed swatches. You may be wondering why I'm doing both ice and liquid dyed swatches. And the reason for that is the ice dyed swatches are great because they show the color splits. But I think the liquid dyed swatches are great because they show the base color of that dye. So I actually use both of them. If I'm trying to put colors together in a color family like more, say, blue purples together, I grab my liquid dyed swatches because I think that's easier to tell which color family different dyes go in. However, if I'm looking for, say, a purple that has a lot of color splits, then I'll grab my ice dyed swatches and start looking at those. So I really find both the liquid and the ice dyed swatches super useful, and I use them every time I choose colors for my dye projects. I actually think I would be very lost without having my color swatches. So to rinse out the dye swatches, I took them to my utility sink and I rinsed them out in cold water, actually kind of a warm water, to rinse out the soda ash and to rinse out any of the excess dye. Because I'm using single colors of dye on these swatches, it's not as important that I do the cold water rinse to get out the soda ash and then the hot water rinse to get out the excess dye. That's really important if you're doing multiple colors because you don't want the colors mingling or mixing on the garment and possibly bonding someplace else on the item other than where you wanted it to, messing up your design. So when you're doing single color dyes like this, the rinsing process is not as critical as it is when you're doing multiple colors on a shirt or another item. I started with the ice dyed swatches, and as soon as I have them rinsed, I'm putting them over in the other side of my sink. Then I'm going to run a container of really hot water along with some Blue Dawn dish soap, and I'm going to place all of these swatches in together and allow them to soak. Then I'm going to rinse out the liquid dyed swatches, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. As I rinse those swatches, I'm going to put them over in the other side of my sink where I already have a container full of some really hot water and Blue Dawn dish soap. Then once I have all of the swatches rinsed, I'm going to go ahead and change out that soaking water. refill it, and then allow all of the swatches to continue soaking for a while to soak out any of that excess dye. After soaking for a while, I placed all of the swatches into my washing machine along with some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent, and I washed them using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed all of the swatches, and let's see what they look like. Okay, so Pink Azalea is the first color, and it's just a really pretty pink. It also splits out kind of a little bit of an orangey peach color. Tea Rose is the next color, and the liquid dye ended up kind of having more of a reddish orange tint to it. I can see why they called it Tea Rose. If you took the color of tea and mixed it with like a pink color, it would end up about this color. But the ice dyed color is more of a pink with, here again, a little bit of a peachy orange split to it. Lipstick is the next color, and it's kind of a pinky red color, kind of in between a red lipstick and a hot pink lipstick. It's a really pretty color too. There aren't a whole lot of color splits that I got in my swatch. Oasis is just a really pretty kind of tealish blue color, and I got some green color splits, some teal, some lighter blues, even a little or a few hints of like a purpley color. This one is going to be a cool color to ice dye with. The espresso liquid dye is a really dark brown, but the ice dye, in mine I ended up with some hints of red, kind of a burgundy-ish type color, few hints of green, blue, some pink colors. This one's going to be a cool one to ice dye with too. It's going to have a lot of color splits. The next color is Simply Gray, and this one is just a really pretty gray. You know, gray can either kind of go a little green or a little blue, and I would consider this one more of a green gray. And with the ice dye, I have some hints of like a mauve, some purpley type colors in there. And then I do have a few speckles of like yellow and pink and blue that didn't blend in well. So this one's going to have some really cool color splits too for ice dyeing. Ecto Green is the next color, and I think that's a cool color name. Ecto Green is pretty much what you would expect. It's a lime green, and then the color splits are just various shades of green. There's some darker green and a few hints of yellow. So that one's a cool color too. Swamp is a really cool kind of olive green color. And then the color splits in the ice dye are more of like a mustard type yellow. A little bit of kind of a khaki-ish type color. I think it's pretty cool. I like this color. And Bluegrass is a really pretty green. As is said in the name, it tends more blue than yellow in the green color. And I don't have a whole lot of color splits in my ice dyed swatch, but it is a pretty color. I think Hyacinth is going to be a really cool color splitter too. The liquid dye is a blue with more of a hint of purple, and then the ice dyed swatch has got blue, purples, pinks, just a variety of shades of those, even a hint of like a turquoisey type color. That one's really pretty too. So that's all the new regular colors, but they also had some clearance colors, and so I bought a couple of those. One of them was Bayou, and the other one is Denim. And the Bayou is a really cool color. It too is like a teal color, and it splits out teals and greens and grays. That one's cool. And then the Denim is exactly what you would expect. It's more of a denim color, and the ice dyed swatch has hints of gray. I'm not sure these clearance colors are still going to be available, but I do think they're cool colors. The next three colors are just some of Pro Chemicals colors that I didn't have. And so the first one is maroon, and it's a really pretty maroon color. You know, with maroons or any kind of reds, they can either lean a little orange or a little purple, and this one goes a little more in the purple realm. So the ice dyed swatch is more of a bright pink, and it's really pretty. It has some hints of purple and a few kind of taupe-ish splits in there. It's a really pretty color as well. Tangerine isn't exactly what I was expecting it to be. To me, it's more of a yellow. I mean, a really bright yellow, but it does have quite a bit of orange in it. I was expecting more of an orange color with maybe just a hint of yellow. It is a fun color, but just like with most yellows and oranges, it doesn't really split a whole lot. And then the last color is Wedgwood Blue, and it's really pretty. I mean, it's like most Wedgwood blues. It's very true to color. And then the color splits on it have a little bit of a kind of a smokier blue or a purple color, which is what I was kind of expecting. So I really like all the new colors. Some of them have quite a few color splits, some of them not so many, but I think that they are all really pretty colors. Drop me a comment down below and let me know if you have any that are your favorites. Maybe you've already tried out some of these colors on shirts. I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet, but I'm excited to try them because I do think some of them are going to be really fun to work with. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.